My name is Melissa Murphy, and I am a respiratory therapist, and in this class, working on getting a degree in clinical informatics. My presentation today is about a piece of technology that was brought out back in 1971, which happens to be the year I was born. That piece of technology is known as the floppy disk. The floppy disk was created by an extremely intelligent man named David Shugart, and he is best known for saying, which is controversial to me, cash is more important than your mother. Well, David, I'm not sure everyone would agree with that, but it does have some value. Basically, the floppy disk hit the market back in the early 70s. It was developed alongside with David Shugart and his fellow workers at IBM. The floppies pretty much changed the entire computer revolution as we know it today. It made it possible to easily load software in a day and time where that was unheard of. It enabled people to share data freely and simply, and it transformed people in their way of transferring data. It made it very easy. It was relatively a cinch to do. Of course, with that kind of technology back in the day, IBM was able to make major money. Other corporations would take advantage of it as well, like Apple, but they were a little years down the road. Shugart, of course, knew what he had was very important and could make him a lot of money too, and he teamed up with a company that we might know or remember as Memorex. And back then, Memorex was used a lot in like the sound industry. People recorded and saved their music on their data through the Memorex disk, and the floppies like changed the way they were able to store all of their music. Shugart then went on to find his own company, Shugart Enterprises, which, lo and behold, would be bought out by a major corporation for a mega billion-dollar contract, and that would be Xerox. So taking it back a little bit, in the beginning, the first floppies were about 8 inches wide. They were really cool in design. They were slim, they were made of plastic. You had like this innovative type of material to clean your disk, but that was the problem. They got dusty, they were easily soiled, and so you would have a lot of problems with long-term use of that particular floppy. So back then in the beginning, the first floppy, the 8-inch, was a piece that would hold 1.44 megabytes. Just to put that into the grand scheme of things, you would need 711 of these floppy disks to equal what we know today as 1 gigabyte. One. Later, they would slim it down a little bit, add more memory. The 8-inch would become the 5.5-inch floppy. The 5.5-inch floppy would be the 3.5-inch floppy. And it would hold more memory, up to 360 kilobytes and 2.88 millibytes. The problem with the floppies is they created something just brilliant. If you were ever working in the day of tape and recordings of time cards and such, you were looking at 3,000 different forms of memory on a time card that you could now easily store with an 8.5-inch floppy. It was amazing. To them, that was something they would have never dreamed capable of being done. But of course, with everything in change, we learn and we grow. And the next process of that floppy disk was the CD-ROM. The CD-ROMs were wonderful. They were shiny, they were gold, they were cool. If you had a CD-ROM and were able to store that amount of data on that, you were mainstream. But again, with advancements in technology, we learned the faults of the CD-ROM, and behold, we are now in the age of USB and USB ports. What we learned was that in the 70s, everyone could stop using that dreaded paper like we talked about. An example would be like punch cards. You were at a time clock, you would punch your cards. Those cards had to be tracked, and somebody was entering them into a system, but with no way of saving them except having stacks and stacks of cards. So back then, one little floppy would hold over 3,000 time cards. And then Apple, knowing this kind of innovation that the floppy disk made, got right in on it because they created a computer, which was one of their first Macs, that needed a 5.5-inch floppy to make the computer work. And lo and behold, the only one that was making those floppies was Alan Shugart. So the two of them got together, and of course, more money was to be made. The floppy disk seems so simple now, but in actuality, it changed everything. Apple prospered from the process, and as much as they prospered from the floppy disk, ironically, they were the first company to abandon them when they made the read-writable CDs available. But if you think about it, for our generation, which is funny to me because I grew up in all of this development, our generation they just can't grasp the transformation we've made from the floppy disk to our USB. It's like listening on a rotary phone with the cord 5 foot long that you could not leave the kitchen while talking to somebody versus now an Apple XR. It's like what a pager would be or a walkie-talkie would be to me as a teenager, and now the kids have FaceTime. It's just a world of difference, and that is why I'm so excited to be in this program and learning about technology and where it has taken us so far and how much more there is to offer. And I can't wait to see what the future brings to us and the generations to come. Thank you very much.